Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Ryan in Singapore. Welcome to the Mindfulness Daily Practice. We just started yesterday with this transition from, how does mindfulness lead into compassion? So just taking a look briefly about how that happens, and it comes through this ability to understand yourself. So as we are paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, we can find that what's happening, right? As we observe our own distractions, we can see ourselves. We can see thoughts as they arise out of the subconscious, and we can start to recognize the way that we think, the typical autopilot behaviors and methods that our minds go through, the processes that we go through as we think and as we get distracted with thoughts. And as we see this, as we see it with this kind of more clarity, we begin to understand ourselves, and we understand ourselves more deeply, especially when we begin to see the same kind of patterns repeating themselves. So we see that a particular way that we react to a thought is happening over and over again. And one typical way that we may face challenging thoughts is with self-judgment. So this definition of mindfulness, paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So let's look at this piece over here, the non-judgmentally piece. So it doesn't mean that we cease all judgment completely, because you'll notice that judgment is something that happens naturally. And so as we're doing our meditation, as we get distracted, we may find that the thoughts that we have, we might judge those thoughts, and you may see that those judgments happen without you considering them. The judgment just happens. I've wandered away again. Oh, I can't believe that I've failed to keep my attention. And it's thoughts like these, in fact, that stop us from practicing sometimes. That we go, I don't want to practice anymore because I'm no good at this. I can't do this anymore. And so non-judgment doesn't mean that these judgments cease, because these are the judgments that happen without us even knowing it. These are these subconscious judgments that come up. And so this is not what we're talking about. These kind of judgments are the same as mind wandering. Something that just happens subconsciously without you even realizing that it's happening. This kind of non-judgment that we're talking about in this definition of mindfulness is, can you be aware of that judgment non-judgmentally? So can you be aware of everything that's happening? And so not just judgment itself, but all of these kind of thoughts and feelings that come without your control of them. So there is a part of you. There's a part of you that sees things, sees yourself from this kind of third-party point of view. And this is meta attention. We spend a little bit of time talking about meta attention. How do I know that my attention has wandered away? There's something out here that is monitoring attention. So this is the attention of attention. And as we meditate, this observing piece becomes stronger. And so we can start to see things objectively. And this really is one of the major benefits of mindfulness practice, is that as we meditate more, we're cultivating this ability to observe ourselves non-judgmentally. So it doesn't mean that down here these automatic judgments inside myself don't stop happening. The judgments are still there, but it's just that this like kind of overarching, I called it Ryan Prime, right? Or yourself. It's a monitoring. It's the monitoring version of myself. It's the version of myself that can see everything that's happening clearly without getting carried away by it. You're seeing. So it's possible to see your judgments without judging, right? And I think this is interesting as well, is that sometimes we go, oh, wait a minute, my practice is supposed to be non-judgmental, and I'm not. I'm judging myself. And so then we start judging ourselves for judging. It's like this piece of ourselves is the piece that finds you when you're lost. So we've wandered away, but this piece comes in and has this attention of attention. It's becoming aware of whatever it is that's happening, and can observe that situation without judgment. And so this is what we mean when we say non-judgmentally. And so as we cultivate this kind of awareness, that's what's really interesting. So this piece out here, this observing part of yourself, can be non-judgmental and can start to see your judgments clearly. And so what is this typical response that we have of ourselves? The typical response may tend to be one of shifting blame, right? We see some kind of situation that we don't like. It seems unpleasant. Maybe this is the first characteristic as we're observing it. We notice that it's unpleasant. We notice the symptoms in our bodies of what happens when we observe something that's unpleasant. So you notice that it's unpleasant, and if we're going on autopilot, we don't see clearly that it's happening. One of our responses might be to try to shift the blame somewhere else. Oh, well, this is this person's fault. The reason this happened isn't because of me. It's because of someone else. It's because, and why? Why is why do we want to shift the blame away from ourselves? Especially in situations where, well, in a lot of situations, most situations, there's at least 1% of the situation that you're in that you're responsible for. And I think this is interesting to see how we want to shift blame away so that we get that as far away from ourselves as possible, so we don't have to blame ourselves, we don't have to judge ourselves. And so this is one response, is to shift it away, so that to push it away so that this is no longer a problem of mine. That's a problem of everybody else that was involved in this situation. And then, of course, the other reaction is the self-berating. Like what a failure I am. Oh, I'm so bad. I can't believe I did this. Oh, and this kind of critical talk that we have towards ourselves. And so self-compassion, involves first some aspect of mindfulness. You have to be aware that you're being harsh and critical to yourself, or you're pushing responsibility away. And the core reason behind it is self-protection. That I don't want to face this unpleasant situation. So, one of the key pieces of self-compassion is authenticity, so that I can see myself clearly. I can see what's going on without pushing it away, but also without self-berating, without being harsh towards myself. So you can start to see these patterns as we experience setbacks in life. And what tends to happen are these two things. And when we push responsibility away, what we miss out on is the opportunity to improve ourselves, because we're saying, well, none of this is my responsibility. And so as you start to take a little bit of responsibility for these things, you can make some improvements. Similarly, the self-berating and self-harshness also is not productive. It isn't helpful in us to continue on. And there's some research behind this, which we'll get into tomorrow. So being kind to yourself is a way for you to also be able to accept that this has happened. And mindfulness is present moment awareness. So whatever it is that's happened in the past, it's already done. Can I learn from my mistakes? Yes, but I don't have to be overly harsh and overly critical on myself. So this is kind of the introduction to self-compassion. We'll talk a little bit more about self-compassion as the week goes on. And we'll notice self-compassion also is a fundamental ingredient to having compassion for others. Like the quote that I read yesterday, you understand yourself, and through self-understanding that's gained and cultivated through mindfulness, you understand others. You recognize all of the common things that we have as human beings. So self-compassion is not a selfish practice, because it really is kind of the foundation of the house. And the way the brain works when it comes to compassion and empathy, we'll talk about it a bit more tomorrow, about how compassion to self can cultivate and lead towards compassion to others. So I'll look at the chat after our meditation. So thanks for the comments. So let's go ahead and get into our meditation. The meditation today is going to be a bit of mindfulness, followed by some gentle repetition, cultivating compassion towards ourselves. So get comfortable. So let's take a few moments here to just settle in to our bodies, into ourselves, just checking in. Who is it that's here today? What version of you has arrived at this practice? How's the body feeling? What are the state of your emotions and thoughts? What's happening in the mind? What's happening in the landscape of emotions? So seeing if you can observe yourself with this kind of third-party, non-judgmental awareness. Just accepting what's here, who it is that's arrived, what the state of you that's arriving here today is. So sometimes it can be difficult to decode our thoughts and emotions. So what might be simpler is to observe the body. What signs do we find in the body? So let's observe the crown of the head and the back of the head. Find any tension in the scalp. What about the face? The forehead, the eyebrows, the eyes, the cheeks. How about the jaw? Sometimes we can feel our teeth clenching. If you find your teeth clenching, I would encourage you just to allow the lower jaw to drop away. So there's a little space between your teeth. You can keep your lips closed. Check into the shoulders, the back, the abdomen. Can you feel your breath moving freely, or is there some tension in the abdominal muscles today? So what do you observe? What do you find as you observe yourself, as you observe your body? And so let's spend a few moments just feeling the breath. And of course, you can't feel the breath, can you? You can feel the way the body moves as you breathe. You can feel air moving through your nostrils. You can feel your chest and abdomen expanding and contracting. And so thoughts may rise up. You may be distracted by emotions. You may be distracted by things going on in your room. Each time you find yourself distracted, notice the distraction. See what's there. See if you can observe it non-judgmentally. And then bring your attention back to the breath. Back to these physical symptoms, physical signs that you are breathing. Hold your attention here as best you can. So we'll spend a couple minutes in silence, just doing our best to keep the attention at the breath. And so now let's begin to shift to observe our attitude about ourselves. So is it possible for us to have an attitude of kindness and compassion towards ourselves? To know that you're just doing your best. Connecting to your intention. Knowing why you're here, why you're practicing. Knowing that not everything we do ends up supporting our highest intention. And so can we be easy on ourselves when we face our inevitable setbacks? it's possible for me to do my best and to let go of the rest. So observing the attitude you have towards yourself and seeing if you can intentionally soften it. Remember a few of the things that you've done that do support your highest intention. Ways that the world has become a better place for your being here. Someone perhaps that you've helped along in their path. Giving yourself some credit for it. As we often do forget to give ourselves credit for the good things that we do. And so for some of us, some of you who are here today, this is enough. Just remembering these positive things that you've done, giving yourself credit for it, remembering your highest intention, and what you can do to continue supporting it. And for others, it can be helpful to bring some well wishes to ourselves. So using a few phrases that can cultivate compassion towards yourself, that can help you to cultivate this compassion towards yourself. So if you like, in your mind, repeating after me, may I be happy and contented. May I be happy and contented. May I be safe and protected and free from inner and outer harm. May I be safe and protected, free from inner and outer harm. May I be healthy, whole, and complete. To whatever degree that's possible for me. May I be healthy, whole, complete. May I be at peace. May I have ease of well-being. May I be at peace. May I have ease of well-being. So one more time. May I be happy and contented. May I be safe and protected, free from inner and outer harm. May I be healthy and whole, to whatever degree possible. May I be at peace. May I have ease of well-being. And so now just take a moment to come back to the breath, letting go of these phrases, coming back to the present moment. Observing the state of the body, the mind, the emotions as we begin to draw our practice to its natural close. And I'll close practice with 3 rings of the bell. All right, thanks everyone. Okay, so just kind of move directly into questions and comments. How did everything go today? And I'll start with the questions before we began the meditation. So please do feel free to share in the chat anything that came up for you today, any questions about this intro to self-compassion. So Barbara asked, might some call it consciousness, what you call Ryan Prime, or is it something different? I think it's something different, because consciousness is something that seems to be with us all the time, whereas I find that this monitoring version of myself is rarely around. Unless I've been cultivating mindfulness a lot. And I guess I say that because before I started meditating, this monitoring version of myself was practically non-existent. I found that I just wasn't aware of what was going on. And that meditation, for me, mindfulness meditation, caused this monitoring version of myself to become a lot stronger. And so I was able to use the strengthening of this external part of me, this external observer, to start to change my behaviors. So I wouldn't call it consciousness, because I think consciousness really is, the consciousness is with us all the time. I think, and again, this is, I think we're getting into the definition of words, which can really differ across various people. So I hope that answers the question. But really, this is the kind of like my definition of this. So So what and what do you think? I'd love to hear your feedback. Barbara and anyone else. What do you think? What's the difference between consciousness and Barbara Prime or Sybil Prime or Rachel Prime or Jean Prime? What are the differences here? Or are they the same thing? And Marie shares, if you think you could have done something better or different, you can be harsh on yourself. Yeah, absolutely. And this happens a lot. I'm certainly familiar with the self-harshness. You're like, oh, why didn't I? I should have. I can't believe this happened. And so, just can you recognize that? And is it useful or not? And that's a good question. And I think we'll talk about it a bit tomorrow. The data shows that being harsh on yourself, as much as we may think that it's helpful, it's not as helpful as we think it is. Thanks, Rachel. Glad to hear that self-compassion has been good today. And this series we're gonna go for a few more days this week on self-compassion. Thank you, Sybil, for your donation. Hello, Donald. Thank you, Emma. Thanks, Cece, for your donation. Kathy shares, I found my mind wandering for some reason. Found it hard to relate to self-compassion, but stuck with it. And I think that's normal. I remember the very first time I did a compassion meditation, and I really didn't like it, to be honest. I thought it was really strange. And I thought, well, I think that was my gut reaction too. This is different from mindfulness. This isn't what I signed up for, was kind of my first reaction to it. And I think that's why I've wanted to spend the last few days trying to show this journey of how we move from mindfulness into compassion. Because for me, when I was first meditating and first introduced to compassion practice, I'm like, these two things are really different, and only through practice did I start to notice the similarity and how one builds into the other, because I don't think it's obvious. So and I think it does remain challenging if you haven't done the practice before. So would encourage you to try a bit more, try again, keep coming back as we do more compassion practice, especially this foundational self-compassion practice. See how it goes. And I wish I had a better, Rachel's talking about Ryan Prime again. I wish I had a better way. Maybe there's a better definition for this monitoring version of ourselves. But this is just one that I used when I first started meditating. Lydia says, it's not so easy in tricky situations to go out of the own, coming back and repeating behaviors. Yeah, absolutely. As we face tricky situations, this is it. So that's why I always use the gym analogy, right? You go to the gym for the first time, and you realize that you start lifting a few small weights, and then you can't go out and lift a car, right? This is something that you need to do a lot of work before you're able to do it. And so just like these tricky situations, you're going to do your automatic behaviors most of the time. And so is it possible to see yourself doing your automatic behaviors non-judgmentally? Right? This is really hard. This can be really challenging. And this, in MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, as we start observing the stress response, this is all we're asking participants to do. Observe the stress response. Don't try to change a reaction. Just observe. And you'll find that as you get used to practicing it, that's the really special, surprising thing, is that eventually things might start changing. So the first thing, though, is just to keep practicing noticing what's happening. In tricky situations especially, just notice and even reflect back. Here's what happened. And can you do it with that kind of non-judgmental awareness? So don't worry about what actually happened. Try not to beat yourself up, because it is in the past. And so this really is one of the powers of self-compassion, to see yourself authentically without judging yourself harshly, especially in these situations in the past. And then you can go, okay, next time I will observe, right? I can observe. And just keep practicing, keep being curious, keep using that observing mind, and things will begin to change patiently and persistently, and you're bound to be successful. You're bound to be successful. Thanks, Rosie. Thanks, Lydia. Nadine says self-compassion grows over time as we practice more, and it's nice when our loved ones point it out to us. Absolutely. And that's this may be a little bit farther down the path, when the changes that you make, when you begin making changes, and then wow, people around you see it. In fact, sometimes you don't even become aware of the changes that are happening through your mindfulness practice, and somebody else points it out to you, and you go, oh wow, I guess there is some change that's happening. I think it's the watcher looking over my thoughts, says Sybil. Thank you. Thanks, Debbie, for joining in, coming in late. But come back tomorrow as we talk a little bit about how compassion works. Yeah, no worries. So if you've missed anything, you want to do this practice again, this practice has been recorded on the internet's big video site, so you can check it out again. I'll have it uploaded probably in, a little bit later today than usual, but a few hours later. So thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for practicing. Let us close with some compassion to self and pushing outwards as well. And Cece asked this saying, patiently and persistently. I copied that from S.N. Goenka. So in the 10-day Vipassana retreat, you'll hear S.N. Goenka say that a few times. Patiently and persistently, and you're bound to be successful. So follow along with me if you like as we send our well wishes out to ourselves and to each other. May I be happy and peaceful. May everyone watching, listening right now, wherever you are, wish you all happiness and peace. May all sentient life throughout the universe, on this great planet of ours, all human beings, everything else, may we all be happy and peaceful.